Welcome to the Asian Tapestry. Chapter 1. The Tiger and the Jackal. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Asian Tapestry, or as I call it, the first chapter. For those who didn't catch the author's note, the Asian Tapestry is a podcast about myths, legends, and lore from Asia, and it's structured in a book-like format called the Book of Fables. All stories are collected from various sources, but in all cases I rewrite the story in my own style. Chapter 1 is called The Tiger and the Jackal. It's a lovely animal tale from India, involving a hungry tiger, a lucky Brahman, and a tricky jackal. Enjoy. On one particular summer's day, when the sun was beating down upon the tops of the luscious green trees of the forest, a Brahman found himself walking along the forest path on his way back home. He was thin, but walked with a noble stature, and although he carried no weapon, his eyes were lit with the flame of wisdom. On this particular day, the Brahman had decided to use the forest path instead of the stone road which he would usually take back home. He had decided to do this because of the harsh sun which had turned the cool stones of the road into flaming embers. His cloth shoes were unable to provide him with much protection, so he cut a path instead through the forest. Many had warned him against doing just this, for within the forest, so it is said, lay dangerous creatures. As the Brahman walked, he heard an odd noise. It was not too far away, and it sounded a little like an animal in pain. Now the Brahman knew that he should ignore it and get home before nightfall, but his heart broke a little as the pained cries grew louder. He walked in the direction of the sound, and soon came across a large metal cage, and within it was a ferocious tiger. The tiger tore at the cage and bit the bars and roared angrily, his voice riddled with grief and frustration. But nothing helped. At last he noticed the Brahman standing near, a terrified expression on his face. But the trapped animal also saw pity. "Oh, kind and wise Brahman, please rescue me from this trap I am in. I have been left here to die," the tiger said pitifully, his eyes full of sadness. The Brahman hesitated. "Oh, mighty tiger, I cannot do that, for if I let you out you are sure to eat me," the Brahman replied, turning to leave. But the tiger leapt up, pressing his face against the bars. "Wait! Please, do not leave me here. I will not eat you. I swear by all the gods that I will actually serve you as long as I draw breath," the tiger exclaimed desperately. The Brahman paused and turned back. He was still very reluctant to do as the tiger asked of him, but as he stared into the sad, pained eyes of the tiger, and saw how tears rolled from his eyes and into his soft fur, he too felt his eyes dampen and his vision blur. "Very well, tiger, I will let you out. Hold on." The Brahman opened the cage, and with a smile stepped aside so the tiger could come out. But before he could blink an eye, Tiger growled and leapt from the cage, his large paws slamming the Brahman to the ground. "You fool! I have been trapped in that cage for so long. Did you not think that I was hungry, and that I could eat you as soon as I was out of there?" The tiger roared, opening his mouth wide, as he prepared to take a large bite out of the trembling man beneath. "Wait, mighty tiger! I was indeed foolish, but I now appeal to your good heart, which I know resides within your mighty chest," the Brahman called out shakily, his eyes wide with fear. The tiger paused as he considered the Brahman's praise. Go on, the tiger said. The Brahmin gulped. If you can find it in your golden heart to grant me this last request, allow me to talk with the first 3 things which we come across in this forest, and let me ask them of their opinion regarding whether your decision to eat me is just. If they all agree that your decision is just, then you may devour me happily without concern for your soul, the Brahmin requested timidly. The tiger thought over the request and agreed. After all, he did want his soul to remain clean. So the Brahmin and the tiger began their journey through the forest, and eventually the Brahmin stopped by an ashwatha tree. The majestic tree listened to the Brahmin's story before replying in a cold, steely voice. Now you see the true justice, Brahmin. For years my kind have provided yours with shade and shelter, yet you cut us down for your own selfish needs. Despite this, accept Tiger's decision with dignity. So the Brahmin, his heart sinking, continued on, and soon came across a buffalo dismally drawing a water wheel. Once again the Brahmin asked his question, and the buffalo replied angrily, You come to me with your pathetic problem. For years I provided the loveliest milk for your kind, and they happily fed me cottonseed and oil cake. Then, when I could no longer provide them with milk, instead of their gratitude and care, I am thrown out, tied to this wheel, forced to work day and night with nothing but rubbish for food. No, accept Tiger's decision with dignity. So the Brahmin continued on, feeling truly dismal about his situation, while Tiger's smile grew larger and larger. Feeling truly desperate, the Brahmin stopped and addressed the road on which he stood. But the road replied indignantly, Do you really think that you can stand upon me with your muddy shoes and question me about justice? For years I have served your kind, providing easy passage wherever they went. But all I get in return is mud and pipe ash and grain husks. No, accept Tiger's decision with dignity. And so the Brahmin despaired. Tiger growled happily. Well then, Brahmin, I have allowed your request, and you have completed it. I shall now eat you with no fear for my soul. And so saying, Tiger opened up his large jaws and prepared to swallow the Brahmin whole. Before his jaws closed around the man's head, the Brahmin shouted out for him to stop. Please, good Tiger, if you could grant me one last wish, I beg of you, to eat me not here where my people will walk and see my bones on their daily trips, but take me back to the area by the cage, and satisfy your hunger there. Although the tiger's stomach growled, he agreed, and they began to walk back to the cage in the forest. As they walked into the clearing where the cage stood, Jackal bounded in and stared at them both, his expression a mixture of curiosity and amusement. Why, Brahman, why do you look so miserable? You remind me of the fish I snatched out of the water and devoured only hours ago, Jackal said, his eyes twinkling with mischief. At the talk of food, Tiger's stomach growled again, and he turned towards the Brahmin. Now it is time for my dinner. The Brahmin trembled visibly, but his mind was ticking away as fast as it could to find a way out of his dismal fate. As Tiger stepped closer to him, the Brahmin shouted out, Wait, good and mighty Tiger, you have surely been so generous and kind to me, I will sing your praises as I die, but if you can find it in your heart to grant me permission to explain the situation to Jackal here, since he is so curious, it would be wrong to deny his curiosity, the Brahmin added. Jackal smirked slyly. Yes, mighty Tiger, I am very curious. The tiger huffed impatiently, but his hunger had been soothed by the Brahmin's compliments, so he waved a paw in consent. The Brahmin immediately explained what had happened, but Jackal frowned and shook his head in confusion. I'm not quite sure I understand. I got a little mixed up somewhere. Please begin again, good Brahmin, Jackal asked. And so the Brahmin explained again. Once more Jackal tilted his head in confusion. Oh, I am so sorry, but I have not been blessed with the great intelligence of Tiger, and I am getting all confused and muddled up. Once more, please, Brahmin, Jackal asked. And the Brahmin explained again, while Tiger clicked his tongue in impatience. Jackal held his head and rocked from side to side in distress. Oh, my poor brain cannot keep up. So you were in the cage and Tiger came walking by, Jackal began hesitantly. Tiger growled impatiently. No, you fool. I was in the cage and the Brahman walked by. Yes, of course. Forgive me, stammered Jackal. So, let me see. I was in the cage. No, that's not right. Tiger was in the Brahman and the cage walked by. Oh, goodness. Oh, that's not right either. Oh, I shall never understand, Jackal exclaimed in despair. By this point, Tiger was outraged by Jackal's stupidity, and leapt up angrily. You stupid dog! I will show you what happened. I am the Tiger, yes? Yes, sir. And that is the Brahman, yes? Yes, sir. And there is the cage, yes? Yes, sir. And so, I was trapped in the cage, yes? Yes, sir, but... began the Jackal, and then broke off in fear. Tiger massaged the side of his head with one giant paw. But what, you moron? Jackal shifted nervously from paw to paw. But I don't understand how you got into the cage, my Tiger, sir, Jackal stammered out. Tiger let out a loud growl of impatience. What do you mean, how did I get in? How else, you fool? Like so, Tiger exclaimed, and walked into the cage. Do you see now? Jackal instantly stopped trembling, and his stutter vanished. A satisfied smirk slid onto his face. Oh, why, yes, Jackal said, nimbly leaping forward and shutting the cage upon Tiger. Yes, I do think I understand now. Silly me. Tiger roared in surprise and anger, clawing uselessly at the steel bars once more. The Brahmin stood in shock, before beaming with gratitude. Clever Jackal, how can I ever repay you? He asked Jackal, as they began to walk away together, leaving Tiger to roar and shout and swear at them. Jackal shrugged. Oh well, I never liked Tiger. He always thought he was the king of the forest, or some nonsense. But perhaps when you're cooking some nice meat, you can spare some for your friend Jackal? The Brahmin happily agreed, and so Tricky Jackal and the lucky Brahmin walked off together, speaking happily with one another. An unlikely pair, for sure. What a lovely tale, sprinkled with humour and dash of moral teachings. I found it quite interesting that the story reveals, in a somewhat funny way, especially with the road, humankind's disregard of their resources. It's an interesting commentary on justice as well. The Tiger does not keep his oath to the Brahmin, even though he rescued him from the cage, and in the end, he suffers for that decision. Jackal's an interesting character as well, and one I really enjoyed writing. I added a bit more description and more characterization at the end of the story than in the original source, as I wanted to explain a little more about Jackal's reasons for tricking Tiger. I also used some authentic words, in this case the Ashwatha tree, which is also known as the peepal tree, or sacred fig tree. The name Ashwatha is a more popular term in India and Nepal. The original source for this chapter's fable is a story called The Tiger, the Brahman, and the Jackal by Joseph Jacobs, which was written in 1892. Jacobs provides an interesting introduction to his book, in which he comments on his belief, and that of many other scholars, that India is the main source of many European fairy tales, or at least, that one can find many strong connections between the two. Jacobs explains that one of the main ways in which Indian folk tales left India for Europe was through the Crusades. The other conduit was the rather mysterious figure of Aesop, a Greek fable writer, or so it is believed. Jacobs believes that many of Aesop's stories may be traced back to Indian fairy tales. Before we end, I have a lovely promo from Folklore on the Rocks podcast.
Hi there, I'm Logan.
And I'm Lindsay.
And we host the new podcast Folklore on the Rocks, where we talk about folklore and lesser-known creatures, cryptids, and monsters from around the world.
So when we say lesser known, we mainly mean that we won't be covering creatures like Bigfoot or Nessie or Chupacabra, just because they're discussed so often, and the world just has so many other awesome options to draw from.
Every 2 weeks, we will be diving deep into the legends and culture that surround a specific creature, and getting a little bit tipsy while we do so. But don't worry, we do our research sober.
On the weeks in between, we're going to be narrating and discussing folktales. Some will be historical folklore from the regions that our creatures are from, and some will be modern folklore, such as no-sleeps and creepypastas.
Ooh. You can find out more about us on our website, folkloreontherocks.com, on Facebook and Instagram at Folklore on the Rocks, on Twitter at Folklore Rocks. So grab a drink, join us, and come on, let's dig deep together.
And that brings us to the end of Chapter 1 of the Book of Fables. I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed this tale, and you join me once more for Chapter 2. If you like what you hear, please take a few minutes to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you can leave reviews, and subscribe on whichever podcast platform you use. Remember to use the form on my website or DM me your name to say that you've subscribed or listened, and your name will soon appear in the Cave of Wonders on my website. There's also a section on my website called The Magic Carpet, which you can hop onto if you want to find out about other amazing podcasts and creators. Follow on Twitter and Instagram at AsianTapestry1, and email me at theasiantapestrypod@gmail.com. This podcast is a proud member of the Straight Up Strange network, and please check us out via the link in the show notes. Intro music was Jalandhar by Kevin MacLeod, and outro music is Raga, Dance of Music by Akash Gandhi. Further details, including license information, may be found in the show notes. I have been your host, the Shirapata, and you've been listening to The Asian Tapestry. Join me next time for Chapter 2 of the Book of Fable.
This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightupstrange.com.